Yikes. From the live casino hotel studio of Pressbox, it is Project Game Day, the little bit of a quick start to the post-game show, but that's what happens when you get absolutely gashed by Nick Chubb for the entirety of the second half and then have 2 interceptions when you're trying desperately to get back into it, and the Ravens are going to fall to the Cleveland Browns. And I'm Glenn Clark. He is Eric Arditti. You know him as RDT, BarstoolRDT from BarstoolSports.com. It's good to see you, pal. Thanks for coming in to hang out.
Always a pleasure.
Of course, considering the result of today's game, you will never be welcome back. I am so sorry. It's just the way it goes. I have this theory that a football season doesn't really begin until you win a game you're not supposed to win or lose a game you weren't supposed to lose. Mm-hmm. And so that's why when people were freaking out about what happened a week ago in Kansas City, my thought was, I don't think this is that big of a deal. The Chiefs are really good. This is Pat Mahomes that we're talking about. You lost a game on the road to the Kansas City Chiefs. That's going to happen.
I think people had that penciled as a loss anyway.
Yes.
I think everyone had that penciled as a loss.
Correct. That's what it is. I don't think you lose your mind too much about what occurred because even as poorly as they played, and I think the final score last week didn't really indicate, I think that they got really lucky on 2 goofy plays in the second half that made it look like it was a competitive game at the end when it wasn't all that competitive. The truth is, look, Pat Mahomes is a magician, right? He's going to do things that
he's a freak.
No one else can do.
Yeah.
And you kind of live with that. You suck it up. You move on. Mm-hmm. Today's the day where the season began. Because today's the day where you look at this Browns team and you say, Baker Mayfield's not a magician. Nick Chubb has not been running the ball like he did today. Not to say he isn't good. He's very good. We all know that, and he was capable of it. But what happened today should not have happened. And because of that, I think there are real concerns that the Baltimore Ravens have to address. I think there are certainly reasons to believe that this is going to be more interesting than it was set up to be. If the Ravens had won this game, they were in such
They're in the driver's seat.
Oh my God! They're sitting at 3-1. They already have a leg up on the team that we think is best suited to compete with them for the rest of the season. That tomorrow one of those 2 teams is going to win a game, but neither one of them look like they have much to offer in this division. They were going to be in such a good place pragmatically if they had just won this football game. Now they're not even really in first place. They're technically still tied, but the Browns have the tiebreaker so far. This is. I don't want to say a disaster because, again, they're 2-2 4 weeks into the season. It can't be a disaster, but oh, boy, this was bad today.
And, again, it wasn't like it was like a close loss, like, the Browns squeaked one out. You know, it was, like you said, they were gashing them for monster plays. And I'm looking at it now. I mean, over 500 yards of offense for the Browns, and they're still, I mean, there's 3 minutes left, and I don't think Freddie Kitchens is taking his foot off the gas pedal, and I don't think he should, you know?
I think this is a bigger deal for them.
Absolutely.
They have struggled so much in the first 3 weeks of the season that they kind of needed
a game like this,
to prove that they were the team that everybody believed they were capable of being.
Sports Illustrated hype and every ESPN piece you saw. Yeah, but again, I mean, there's some major concerns, I think. I mean, the secondary looked pretty bad.
We knew the secondary was a concern after the Arizona game, right?
Yeah.
After the Arizona game, you said, okay, if you believe that this secondary was set up to absorb a loss to Jimmy Smith and just be okay, not the case. They struggled against Arizona. You could live with it again against Mahomes. You could say, hey, look, I get it.
He's an outlier whenever you look at any stats or, you know,
and
that game is an outlier.
And they've got speed all over the field, and you could just sort of say, hey, look, he can just do things other people aren't capable of doing. There's not much you can ask your secondary to do here. You knew you were going to need to go win a shootout type of game against Kansas City. This is inexplicable. It's not like Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham ate you alive today.
Yeah.
You got eaten alive by Jarvis Landry. To give Marlon Humphrey credit, he did a very nice job today on Odell Beckham. He's the one guy that you actually tip your cap to after the end of this whole thing.
And again, you didn't really hear. You saw Odell didn't have any catches, and you didn't hear Marlon's name a lot, which is what you want out of the cornerback. You don't want to hear their name. It's just like the officials, as the Browns put another one on.
Yeah, right. And just to make this look even worse. A bunch of thoughts that I'll get. I'm gonna get to some of your thoughts, and appreciate you guys chiming in already. We'll get to your thoughts as we roll along again. I'm Glenn. He's Eric. The first thing that jumps out at me today is obviously the story of the actual football game is what happened on the ground with Nick Chubb. That's the story of today's game. Brandon Williams not being available for the Ravens today clearly hurt. I don't know that singularly Brandon Williams changes the result of this football game. And again, we don't believe this is a long-term injury for Brandon Williams. It was something that popped up yesterday,
like
which is
pregame right before.
Really weird. Really weird to have an injury just pop up yesterday. Don't know the story of it. We will have to find out a little bit more about that. Ends up missing the game today. He tried to go in the pregame. They decided to shut him down. It didn't work. If they had a healthy Brandon Williams, would they have won this football game? I don't
think he swings it. He's not Warren Sapp. He's not swinging it either. He's not Haloti.
I also don't think that Nick Chubb would have gashed them quite the way that he did. So I don't know what to make of that. And you just say, hey, look, next week you have Brandon Williams back. Everything's going to be fine. I'm not willing to say that just yet because I do think it was a combination of both the fact that they got gashed via the run and the fact that they got burned by Jarvis Landry throughout the course of the day. And a big play downfield to Ricky Seals-Jones. The linebacker coverage continues to be an issue. The safeties are not helping. A lot of people are beating up Earl Thomas. I get it. I get it. This is the standard for Earl Thomas is not just to go out and be a player. The standard for Earl Thomas is you're getting paid a lot of money. And you are revered as a future Hall of Famer because the expectations are that you go make big plays.
He was being touted as like the commercials. They say like, oh, he's one of the best playmakers since Ed Reed, and it's like he was.
He has been, absolutely. Now, is he a different guy since the injury a year ago? Perhaps.
Absolutely, it looks like he is for sure.
He is not really offered much, and I get that everybody's going to bring up the fact that he's the one that's been saying, hey, I plan to stop the big plays. That's what I'm going to do. And that makes it look worse. I'm not really worried about that as much as I'm worried about whether or not he's making big plays. I don't care what he's saying.
Well, it's also like you want him to say that. That's the mindset you want your safeties to have.
And the guys that you paid a lot of money to. You want them to be the guys that take the ownership for it. But when taking the ownership, you also take the ownership of, dude, you're not making them. You're not making those big plays. A lot of people have brought up, for example, here Paul from Orlando checked in. Maybe it's trivial, but I didn't care for Earl Thomas seemingly giving up on that Chubb run around the 30-yard line. It set an example and at least looked like you're trying. People talk about Ozzy's blind spot was wide receiver. Man, we need to start talking about safety since 2012. My God, the number of wasted draft picks and free agent money in that area, unreal. Again, we're only 4 weeks into this. I'm not prepared to write off Earl Thomas as a waste right now. We are at the quarter pole. It's the first time where it's sort of fair to really take a big picture look at this football team. And yes, it's a disappointment right now based on what your expectations are for Earl Thomas and what the Ravens did there. We will see how that continues to play out. I'm not ready to say it. The bigger point that you make, twofold. One, I agree. I thought that was a really bad look for Earl Thomas to bail on that long Nick Chubb run. I thought it was a really bad look. Now, was he going to get to Nick Chubb? No. But I get what you're saying, which is this is football. You never know what goofy thing might happen. What if?
Say he pulls the Deshaun and drops the ball.
Something along those lines, right?
It's like sending a message. Like, he's the team, one of the captains. Like, you gotta show the young guys, like, hey, you run it out.
Somebody would probably compare it to the things that we bitch about in baseball, like guys running out ground balls, and I say, hey, look, they weren't going to be. You're right, but you still want the person. It's okay to say that you want the person to do that, and also understand it's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
if Earl Thomas made 5 other plays today and gave up on that one, I would probably walk out of the day and say, all right, man, I'm gonna live with that. That was always my Manny Machado argument, right? Yeah. Like, I can live with the fact. No, he wasn't great at base running, and yes, it was frustrating, but I lived with it because he was good at 60 other things.
Exactly, because he'll make a play to make up.
Correct. Earl Thomas, on a day in which you didn't make those plays, we're going to be rubbed a little bit more the wrong way by the fact that he gave up on that Nick Chubb run down the field.
I was going to say, that may be the highlight you see from him if people talk about this game and Earl Thomas, is him bailing on that play, and it's not him making a pick or a big hit or forcing a fumble or something like that.
That's right.
That's going to be what people remember from this game. Yep.
Great point. Great point, Eric. That is his image from today's game, is the fact that on that big play that was the game ender, right? The Ravens had just gotten back within 6. All the momentum, the crowd was electric. It looked like the Browns were going to pull the Browns again, and they had just been gashed down the field by the Ravens.
And Landry, they just announced Landry was out, and it was like, well, this is it. This is the Browns.
This is the moment. One play later, this ends it, and here you have Earl Thomas pulling up and sort of giving up on the run. And you're right, it's not a good look. Again, is it the end of the world? Was he going to make the play? No, he wasn't going to make the play. But I'm with you guys that, yes, on a day in which he didn't do anything else,
it's not a good look.
It's not a good look for him, and that's the visual, and he has to answer to that moving forward. He might have the game of his life next week, and if that's the case, we'll deal with that then.
Yeah, then no one will ever talk about that again.
Exactly right. Buzz thought we maybe started a little bit early. He's like, 5 minutes ago. Nope, never mind. Who am I kidding? I'm like, yeah, we almost started. For what it's worth, we actually nearly started a possession earlier, and then this is not even a joke, I had a technological flub. And I said, all right, I guess I'll wait a little bit, and then I'll allow one more drive, and that was the second interception. And I said, all right, well, look at how that worked out. AJ wants to know, any chance we bench Earl Thomas for Deshaun Elliott? Not today. I mean, not right now.
Yeah.
Deshaun Elliott, by the way, made a nice play in special teams. That was good to see. You appreciate that, and a guy that they want to see some moving forward. I don't think they're there with Earl Thomas. I don't think this is necessarily Earl Thomas's fault, what we're seeing. I think it's disappointing he's not making the plays, but I think to pin it all on Earl Thomas, what we're saying is all of our frustrations we're just going to put in one guy. And I think that's unfair. It's more than just an Earl Thomas problem. Now, Earl Thomas, again, is a known commodity. He is a name player.
It's like the face of the unit, the defensive unit.
He was actually the last player introduced today when they introduced the defense, which I said something on Twitter. I'm like, I don't remember the last time the last Ravens defensive player introduced before a home game was a non-drafted player.
Yeah, like a guy not from the system.
I mean, at some point was Terrell Suggs hurt for a game, and so they had to introduce somebody. I mean, that was what it would require because obviously, or it would have been somebody at the beginning.
It was Ray or Ed,
right? There was Ray,
Suggs,
Ed, or
someone
Suggs,
like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if Ray was hurt, it would have been Ed, and then once those guys were gone, it was Suggs until he's gone. This is the first time ever, maybe, that we've seen this occur. So I get it. I understand what it is why the frustration is there with Earl Thomas. And I'm not telling you you're wrong. I just don't think we should go off the deep end yet, as much as I think the fair thing to say is there are bigger expectations for Earl Thomas, and he needs to show us those things the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and it's like, again, like it's not, you can't pin everything on him, but he's taking the brunt of everyone on Twitter and Facebook and in the media and stuff like that. And again, I mean, it's not, he's not making the plays that he was paid to right now, but again, like you mentioned, we're only 4 games into the season. And again, I don't think they're going to bench him. Again, 4 games into the season, he's a proven veteran, like you said, probably a Hall of Famer. They paid him a lot of money. They're not going to bench him.
No, they're not going to bench him, but he has to play better, unquestionably.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say, when I'm saying these things, I think it's really important. Nobody is arguing that Earl Thomas is playing well or that this is. But it's not yet to the point where you say, well, we can't put him on the field.
Yeah, he's not that big of a liability yet. He's not getting torched every single time out.
You got to give it a little bit more time. But yeah, at some point there's going to have to come a time where the Ravens say, is this working? Look, Tony Jefferson got off to a very slow start to his Ravens career, and while he hasn't been great necessarily since then, he's been better than what we saw in the early going of his time with the Ravens. You're going to have to give Earl Thomas some time as well. But is it possible that Earl Thomas is just done post-injury? It's possible.
Could be, yeah.
That was one thing that we talked about. We all were excited about Earl Thomas, but we had to acknowledge there was a reason things seemed to sour with him and the Seahawks, and they weren't going to pay him. And then the injury occurred.
Well, he had 2. Didn't he break his leg twice?
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, again, safety with 2 leg breaks, stuff like that. It definitely adds up over time, and I think you're seeing that now. But
all right, let's go through a couple more of these. Calvin, we gotta try to talk Calvin off the ledge. He is ready to jump. Calvin says, "Glenn, it's your podcast. If you don't read it, I don't care. I'm fine." He's trying to say, "I'm done with this garbage team." They're 2-2. I'm done with this garbage team. Earl Thomas should retire. Baltimore has no sports teams as far as I'm concerned.
Yikes.
It's sort of like the president saying that the Speaker of the House wasn't the Speaker of the House anymore. I'm not sure that you can make that decision, Calvin. I'm done with this team. I'm not watching anymore. Earl is trash. Baltimore doesn't have any sports teams as far as I'm concerned. This defense is full of wimps. Look, they clearly have a problem on the defensive side of the ball. We have to address that at this point. Again, a week ago I was willing to chalk it up to Patrick Mahomes.
I think you penciled them in for 450 yards
Correct.
And 35 points every
There's
every
a
week.
far bigger problem today. Some of that will be aided by the return of Jimmy Smith, which appears to be in the next couple of weeks. Not all of it will be. The biggest issue that we thought they had on the defense side of the ball coming into the season was the fact that they didn't really seem to have a significant pass rush. Today they had 1 sack.
Yeah, on a line that was getting abused.
Their tackles were terrible.
Yeah, on national TV last week, I think, and that was like the only thing people talked about this week was the Browns' offensive line looked like the old Browns' offensive line minus Joe Thomas.
Absolutely. So remains a huge concern, but I think the concern that we allowed ourselves to dismiss that was the bigger issue we probably should have recognized was the fact that like their coverage from their linebackers wasn't good with C.J. Mosley. Mm-hmm. The notion that it was suddenly going to get significantly better without him was probably always a problematic way of thinking.
Wishful thinking,
right?
Like, hey, CJ, he's good against the run, he's not good against the pass.
Right?
Oh, he's out. We'll put Peanut in, and
right, and it'll just suddenly be better.
Yeah, it just fixes itself. Like,
not the case.
This isn't Madden. It doesn't just because the rating.
The
Madden, if your rating's good, it's going to be good.
The linebacker coverage has been atrocious. The safeties are not helping the way that you want them to. It is a mess in there right now. How do they solve that? I don't have that answer. I think one of the things that we had forgotten, because we just always talked about Terrell Suggs as being a sack artist, was the fact that in recent years he had become the team's by far most complete linebacker and was actually a big help in pass coverage in recent years. Stunning considering his age. But he got significantly better in that department as his career went on. I don't think that we really recognized how much that was going to hurt the Ravens to lose Terrell Suggs from a pass coverage standpoint, because you never think of him in that.
Everyone kind of just said, oh, they're going to lose 8 to 10 sacks, a year, and that's it. It was, you never heard anything about him in pass coverage.
So how do you improve it? I don't have at this point I do have to start we have to have a conversation about Chris Board, who going into the year we thought was going to get an opportunity to see more snaps, has not gotten all the snaps that we thought he was going to get. I think they have to figure out if Chris Board can be someone that can help out in that department, because they are absolutely getting abused when linebackers are in coverage. It's a huge problem for this team.
Ferguson hasn't done anything. The guy they drafted to,
I mean, is only the second week he's been active, right? The new pass rush specialist. That was the idea. Matt Judon's made a couple of plays. Also has had a couple of penalties. Pernell McPhee's made a couple of plays. They got some batted balls today. They did some
first play of the game. I'm like, oh, here we go. Batted down pass. He was right in his face. I was like, they're gonna have a field day with this line, and it was like that in the sack, and it was like Baker wasn't even touched after that.
AJ, when Maurice Kennedy is your best defensive player, you're in trouble. I mean, obviously, that's clear. And today, Maurice Kennedy arguably was their best defensive player. Made 2 huge plays in the first half to sort of keep them in this thing and keep it as a 10-7 game at the half, which is why really at the half I wasn't all that concerned.
I think you take that 10-7.
The way that things have gone for it to be a 10-7 game at the half, I was like, okay. I mean,
could be going better, could be going worse, but
exactly how I felt.
I'll live with that.
All things being equal, I was kind of all right with it. I did not expect Nick Chubb to murder them in the second half.
8 yards a touch.
Correct. Project Game Day brought to you by Wise Markets. Need groceries today but don't have time to shop? Order online with same-day pickup or delivery at Wise Markets. Wise to go online. Now that's convenient. Alex, do the Ravens find a way to get Ramsey in purple and black? You and I talked about it a little bit in the second half, Eric. We talked about it at halftime. It is my belief that the Jaguars do not want to trade Jalen Ramsey. And everyone I have talked to in the NFL about this particular topic seems to be of the same opinion. That the Jaguars do not want to trade Jalen Ramsey. They purposely set the standard of what they were asking for to be so high
that it's almost
unreachable. Right, exactly right. So when we heard the rumors about the Ravens offering a first, second, and Hurst, which again I have not been able to get any confirmation. That was a loose. That was you.
That was Chaps from Barstool.
Oh, okay.
He is a Jags fan. I don't know where he got it from, but I know that
there was a loose report from a radio host as well in Jacksonville about that. I have not been able to get any confirmation the Ravens actually offered that.
And I've heard other people say, I don't know where that came from.
Right. I'm not trying to knock down your guy or anything like that. Maybe he's right about it. He might be. I have not been able to confirm that with anybody. Now, in fairness, the Ravens, of course, would be tight-lipped because they don't want Hayden Hurst to walk in tomorrow and you guys trying to trade me? That would not be a good move. Now, he's also from Jacksonville, so maybe there'd be something neat about that. I don't know. The point being, to all of this, if that doesn't get it done, if that was an offer, and that doesn't get it done, I think you realize what it is the Jaguars are asking for. And I think they're purposely asking for that because they really don't want to trade the guy.
Yeah.
They genuinely have no interest in trading Jalen Ramsey. I think they want to keep him. I think they want to sign him. And so
it does take 2 to tango. So, again,
I mean, is there a point at which the Ravens say, I guess if we've got to offer 2 first-round picks and a player, I get it. It looks like a mess today. But today was the type of day where you start wondering, did they look like the type of team that they're Jalen Ramsey away from winning a Super Bowl?
So that's what I was going to say is you take another guy, another new player, add him into the mix. I mean, we see what happened with the new player with Earl Thomas. All we've heard about was miscommunication. We saw it in the Chiefs game. In this game on TV, they kept saying it. Oh, there's miscommunication on this play. So it's like, all right, so you want to add another new guy in. I mean, is he going to be able to pick it up on the fly and go and just mesh perfectly?
Look,
maybe
given his talent,
he's good enough to, maybe.
Right.
But
now, in fairness, remember Earl Thomas when he came in said, "I couldn't believe how complicated the Ravens."
He was he was making it sound good. Like, oh my gosh, we run such a complex system here. And now it's like
in Seattle, it's completely basic, and you're like, oh. Okay,
but now it's like, wait. So do you not understand? Like, what's going on now?
Right? No, it's a fair. It's a fair question. I genuinely don't think that's the answer. Somebody else asked about Taco Charlton. Who was this? AJ wants to know why the Ravens don't go hard after Taco Charlton. I don't know that Taco Charlton solves their problem.
That was he didn't produce and
right. There was a reason why he wasn't active in Dallas.
And after what he was drafted 2 years ago,
correct?
I think. Yeah, so he fell out of favor quick.
If you want an argument for the Ravens being maybe a Jalen Ramsey away from being able to compete for a Super Bowl, it's the fact that both the Chiefs and the Patriots looked vulnerable today. Right? They both look like teams that can be had.
Yep.
I don't know how this one's going to finish up between the Patriots and the Bills, and I don't know how it ended up finishing up with the Chiefs and the Lions, but a week ago, they both looked like teams that were world beaters, that it was going to take a miracle for you to win.
You can just give them buys until the AFC Championship.
Whereas today, you look at it and you say, hey, look, those teams are more vulnerable than maybe you gave them credit for. Perhaps there really is an argument that the Ravens, with a Jalen Ramsey, could get everything else to the point where they could compete. I don't know that I'm buying into that, and for such a crazy price, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and again, like we said, I don't know if they want to trade them to someone in the same conference.
Also a very fair point. From Wes, what can we do with the offensive line? Can we make any changes there? They ran the ball pretty well today. I get it. The pass protection was not exactly what you would want it to be, but boy, it's not like they averaged 10 yards per carry. Now I get it. That mixes in a couple of runs for Lamar Jackson. Sorry, I that no. They averaged 6 yards per carry. And I know that Lamar Jackson had a 29-yarder in there, and so that number's not quite 6, but still, if you're telling me even take that away and it's more like 5 yards per carry, I'm pretty happy with that in general. Like, that's a number that I'm okay with.
Yeah.
Could they have used a little bit of better pass protection? I guess they could. I just don't think I don't think there are issues with the offensive line. I think that early on, Brad Bozeman got trucked on a Lamar Jackson sack. That was problematic, and the pressure really started to come in the fourth quarter when they were down by a couple scores.
They knew they were throwing. Yeah, but I don't think the offensive line led to that loss. I thought, Lamar's going to take some of the sacks just because how long he holds the ball and he's sitting back there. But again,
when they were down by 14 and put together that drive, they were moving methodically with no problem, doing whatever they wanted to do. The defense was the issue. I just don't know yet that you need to make any sort of change along the offensive line. At some point, look, Brad Bozeman can't give up that sack at the beginning of the game. He got absolutely murdered by Olivier Vernon early on in the game. I don't think Brad Bozeman was the problem today. I think that play was a problem. I don't think you're in a rush to make a change because of that play.
Yeah, you're not going to look back at that and say like, oh, that was the tipping point. That's where it all started. And
correct.
It was just a sack. He gave it up, and it's like, all right, whatever. You move on.
From Calvin's still going. Man, Calvin is really. Calvin, I'm worried, but it's a game. It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right. I don't think the Ravens are done. I think it was a bad day. I think it's a bad loss. I don't think we should sugarcoat it in any way. I think this is a bad loss for the Baltimore Ravens. I just don't think it's worth panicking quite the way that you're panicking.
No, I don't think no one should be out there burning jerseys or who wants my tickets for the rest of the year. I think it was a loss to a team that should be playing better
than they have been.
Exactly. Right. And it's Baker was going to come around sooner or later. I think he had a pretty good game today.
If you want to panic about this defense, I'd listen to it.
I'd
listen to it. I think there is a real, genuine reason to be concerned about this defense, that their flaws are on film for teams to look at and to be exposed. That's what we've seen, particularly with the linebacker coverage problems in recent years, that teams have seen that and said, well, we'll go after them too.
This is what we're going to attack.
I think they're avoiding Marlon Humphrey. I do think that helps. It gets helped a lot once Jimmy Smith gets back on the field. I know that of the two, they'd rather throw at Jimmy Smith than Marlon Humphrey, but I still think that they're not as inclined to just point out who's the other guy, let's throw the ball there, as they have been in recent weeks. I'm just not losing my mind about it just yet, but I do think there's real reason for concern. From Paul, who's the secondary coach for the Ravens. I'm guilty. Let me make sure, because there's two Chris's. I think it's Chris Hewitt. And Chris Horton's the special teams coordinator. Yeah, Chris Hewitt, I believe, is the secondary coach. He goes on to say, I'm guilty as much as anyone of blaming the actual players, but would think the coaches are culpable to a certain extent. There was one play where Humphrey was covering outside and Jefferson was in the slot and went over to the same guy as Humphrey, and the receiver in the slot went flying by open. I do remember the play you're talking about, and the communication certainly appeared to be an issue today. The report from from Jeff Zrebiec of the Athletic is that they switched from having Patrick Onwuaso as the guy with the helmet.
Green dot.
Yeah, the green dot, exactly right, to it being Tony Jefferson this week. So how much that played a role in some of those issues? Do the coaching staff deserve culpability? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. They're in on this, no question about it. And as much as I say, hey, Jimmy Smith coming back will help things, well, unfortunately, what we seem to know about Jimmy Smith around here is he might miss games again at some point.
Yeah, for one reason or another. Yep. But again, the secondary coach thing to me, that's kind of like, oh well, Chris Davis isn't hitting well, so we got to fire the hitting coach. It's like, will that change something? Maybe, but like that's not the big thing. Like they're not losing because of the secondary coach. It's just and again, I get why people say stuff like that to
I mean, when you have a day like today, you start having to wonder about everything. This is the one I will give Larry. This is a fair point. Larry says, we gave up 40 points at home to the Browns. Let that sink in. I won't pile on because so many will, so I feel like it's pointless, but there is something really incredibly disturbing when you are this bad at home. Never seen a team at halftime make adjustments to get worse. Well, I'm not sure what that one means, but we'll roll along. Great point, Glenn. Are we really a Ramsey away from being good? I think not. I don't disagree with Larry that this is a jarring result for a defense and an organization that has always been built around defense. Now, part of the problem is while they were building around their defense, they let their offense fall to the wayside. Yeah. So then they said, hey, we need to start putting some resources on the offensive side of the ball because we've been putting them all on the defensive side of the ball. And unfortunately, the defensive resources, as we keep pointing out, have not all hit.
They're not producing. It's like they're seesawing back and forth.
Right. All of these early round picks that we've been talking about that have been problematic, some of which are already gone, the Bronson Kafusis and the Kamalai Correas of the world, will throw in. They really needed Tim Williams and Tyus Bowser, who are both early round picks, to step up. Tyus Bowser had a sack today, that was nice, but neither of those guys have proven themselves to be impact players at this point. That continues to hurt. The defense kept getting so many resources that were not turning into valuable football players, Marlon Humphrey aside, because he certainly has been a valuable football player. There's no question about that. That's problematic. Patrick Onwuaso is a kind of a nice player. He was an undrafted guy, not a draft pick, but he's a nice player.
Seems like a middle of the pack. He's not terrible, but
not a game changer.
He's suitable. He'll do. He'll do. That's what we'll say. He'll do.
But I understand if the reason why you're flipping out is because I've never seen this before. I've never seen the Ravens be gashed for 40 points, be destroyed in the second half of a football game on defense, for the defense to be the story of the game. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong or that everything's just going to be okay next week. I think there's a real problem there, and I don't know that there's a simple solution. I don't know that the answer is trying to give up a boatload of future first-round picks for Jalen Ramsey.
You don't mortgage your future just for the Rams.
I think they might have a problem that can only be solved by players getting better, and I think there's real reason to fear whether or not some of those players are going to get better. I think this is a problem for the Ravens the rest of the season. The other answer to it might simply be you accept who you are, and you know going into every week you've got to be the team that goes and scores a boatload of points. Yep. I brought it up at halftime. I was stunned that John Harbaugh would decide, and whether it was his decision or Greg Roman's, whatever it was, that at 3rd and 16, when they got the ball to start the game, they just decided to give up and run a draw. Lamar Jackson's been good on 3rd and long this season.
He is a weapon. Who knows what's going to happen with him? He'll take a 3rd and 16 and turn it into, he'll have a 40-yard run.
Right. For the most part, he hasn't made, the reason why you don't want your quarterback doing that is because you don't want him making a desperate, drastic decision trying to convert a 3rd and long. You don't want, but he hadn't been doing that this year up until this point. Now, again, a couple of things they did in the fourth quarter were not great, but they were desperate. They were down by a couple scores. They were trying to force the issue.
Yeah, they had to do stuff.
On 3rd and long, he's mostly been good. And I get it. It was a scoreless game. It seems like it's early on. Maybe you just want to, you don't expect the Browns to suddenly come to huge life offensively, so let's kick it down. But at some point, you might as an organization have to accept what you are, which is that the defense isn't this defense any longer. And you have to be the team that scores a boatload of points and be prepared to score a boatload of points every week. And if that's the case, I don't think you're running a draw on 3rd and 16. I think you look at 3rd and 16 and say, we've got to have a play for that, with perhaps the backup plan being maybe Lamar goes and gets it for us if it doesn't work out. I think that's who you need to be.
Like you said, I mean, for years, or people around here, it's been there since they came to Baltimore. Everyone knows them as, it's the defense and then whatever the offense can do. And like you're saying, maybe it is, time of the changing of the guard. Like maybe you are going to have to score 35 points a game to win just because the defense can't stop anyone.
I mean, if that's the case, then you got to make your decisions based on that. It's one thing for John Harbaugh to go for 2 down 14, which a lot of the analytics people love. And I actually had no problem with that today. Because, as I said, it was a drive where they were gashing the Browns down the field. The Browns weren't getting a week ago.
They did whatever they wanted on that drive.
A week ago, when they did that to start the third quarter, and they had been down by 17, they decided not to go for 2. They went for 2 when they got a miracle play that should have never happened because Seth Roberts pushed off. Then they decided, despite not really moving the ball or having any success, that was the time they were going to go for 2. I don't think analytics alone should be making these decisions. I think it should be a combination of analytics and football and feel for the game.
Your gut. You're just again, what your history and what you know.
And what the circumstances are leading up to that, right? Like, again, I thought today when they were down by 14 and put together a drive where they were moving the ball at will, I thought that was the right time to say, okay, let's go for 2.
You have the momentum. You murdered them down the field. Like, hey, let's keep it going. What's another 2 yards?
And the argument is, hey, if we get it, then perhaps we could set ourselves up where we could win the game and not have to go to overtime. And worst case scenario, we end up having to go for 2 later. Again, I get the thought process behind it. Today, I thought it was defensible. I didn't think it was quite as defensible a week ago in that circumstance because of the feel for the game in the moment.
Yep.
But it's not just analytics. Like, I think that you have to recognize what you are as a football team, and you might, if this is what you are defensively, have to be more of a team that pushes the issue and throws a ball downfield in 3rd and 16, decides to trust your quarterback, let your quarterback go win the game instead of trusting that your defense is going to win the game because
stop and get a pick or get a sack or something like that.
I don't know if you can trust it. All right, I need just like a minute of a break. And then we'll come back in. We'll wrap it up. I know most of you, there's still more comments that have come flooding in. We will get to all of them, I promise. Glenn Eunice, what's up, buddy? It's good to see you. Miss GY around these parts. So we'll get to all of that, more comments, and then we'll start looking ahead as, the Ravens follow up to this. They got to go to Pittsburgh next week, so we'll think about that as well. I'm Glenn. He's Eric at Barstool. No, it's at EDD22, right?
EDITTI22.
EDITTI22 on Twitter is how you follow him. Eric Arditti from BarstoolSports.com. It's the Project Game Day postgame show after the Ravens lose to the Browns. We will be right back. I promise. Right back. Now I mean it.
Hey, this is Stan the Fan. You know we're all hoping for a special season out of our football team. When it comes to dining out casually and affordably, I know a place is special every season. The Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard. Not only are they known all over for their great steamed crabs and crab cakes, they have a couple specials you want to keep in mind. Monday night is crab cake night. Tuesday night is ribs night. Wednesday night is steak night, partnered with half-price bottles of your favorite wines. And Thursday night is lobster night. So check out the Costas Inn this football season, and you may come back whatever the season. That's the Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard, 410-477-1975.
Need groceries today but don't have time to shop? Order online with same-day pickup or delivery at Wise Markets. Wise to go online. Now that's convenient.
This is Stan the Fan for Glen Burnie Transmissions, located right in the heart of Glen Burnie for almost 60 years. If you suspect you're having a transmission problem, GBT can save you hundreds of dollars over taking it to the dealers for a repair. Make an appointment for a free diagnostic and estimate. Call GBT at 855-728-1841. Their mission is simple: to provide excellent service at a reasonable price. Go to their website at gbt-online.com to check out all of the 5-star reviews. Let my friend Mark Schwartzman and his GBT team take the troubles out of transmission troubles. Call them today at 855-728-1841.
Respect. It's more than a word. In the U.S. Army, it is one of our core values, earned through selfless service to our nation and making a difference both at home and abroad. On the Army team, respect is earned daily. And now, in addition to earning respect, you may earn up to $40,000 in bonuses if you qualify. To learn more, visit goarmy.com/bonus or call 1-800-USA-ARMY. Paid for by the U.S. Army.
Catch all of the action at your neighborhood Glory Days Grill, where we have tons of TVs to catch every moment of every game. Enjoy $5.99 burgers on Mondays, $5.99 nachos on Thursdays, and drink specials throughout the season to help you cheer on your favorite teams. Come in today and try something new from our seasonal menu. Glory Days Grill, great food, good sports. All right, back in here on the Project Game Day postgame show. The Ravens fall to the Browns today at home, 40-25. Glenn Clark and Eric Arditti from BarstoolSports.com. A few more comments. My buddy Griffin Bass gets in. What's up, Griffin? I'm not used to having to discuss defensive woes of the Ravens, but Brandon Williams not playing is really what hurt us. After they established a run with Chubb, the passing game really opened up for Baker, and then they were able to give it back to Chubb. I agree that that's a major storyline here. I would be careful in trying to think as soon as Brandon Williams is back, all the defensive problems are solved. That's the only thing I would say about that. I do think it's a major, major story of what unfolded today. But I'm not so certain that it's just as simple as get Brandon Williams back next week. The Ravens have no more problems defensively.
Yeah.
I think that they've got some bigger problems defensively that would have been aided by Brandon Williams being out there today, and maybe this game looks different if that's the case somehow, but I think they've got bigger defensive issues than just that.
Yeah, I think he's patching one hole on a boat that's sinking. Like, yeah, you can, if when Williams comes back, maybe Chubb
teams
doesn't
will teams cannot gash their defensive line.
Chubb's not going to have 160 yards, probably.
Right.
But again, I mean, that's not going to fix every problem. Again, I think you're putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole there.
The linebackers in coverage, the play of the safeties continues to be problematic, and frankly, they still just are not getting much in the way of a pass rush. That's still an issue. GY, all he said, our buddy Glenn Eunice, just said, ouch. Yeah, that's sort of how we all feel today. And
that could be on the Baltimore Sun tomorrow.
Correct. And by the way, what I appreciate about Eunice is that he's not going to say too much more because he wants to think it out. Like, that's sort of where he is he's trying to figure out exactly. We're all reacting instantly to what we saw, whereas he likes to be a little bit more thoughtful in that way. Fortunately, I don't get that option because we got to come here and do this post-game show. I try not to panic about things. I try to keep it all in perspective. But ouch feels about right. Like, this really is everything I saw in the second half against the Cardinals, everything I saw last week, I was willing to give it sort of a, okay, like that wasn't a great second half against the Cardinals, but you won the football game. Everything's all right. Yes, what happened last week, not so great, but this is Patrick Mahomes we're talking about.
Yep.
Today, you have way more of that feeling of, okay, there's a problem.
It's much harder to swallow today than it would have been, or than it was last week.
Certainly, that's how I feel. From AJ, Brandon Williams, again, there's a chance he was going to play today, so we assume he'll be okay and he'll be back next week, but we'll monitor that throughout the course of the week. From Paul, I saw the CBS stat at the beginning of the second half that the Ravens had lost 16 straight games when losing at halftime, now 17. Obviously different factors over the course of those games, but still doesn't give you warm fuzzies about the staff being able to outcoach the opposition. That speaks a little bit to Larry's point. Larry brings up, again, Glenn, the commentators mentioned countless times how depleted the Ravens were on D, and they found a way to out-scheme us and outplay us all day. What was our excuse? We were out-coached in every facet again. Why? This is really disturbing again. I got to be careful about some of these things. I'm not dismissing what you're saying in any way. I do think there's something to be said for the Browns knew they had a problem, and yet were able to survive that problem. I think, unfortunately, the bigger complaint I have isn't that the Ravens didn't overcome their problems defensively. It's that they saw what the issues were going to be for the Browns offensively, and yet didn't seem to have a plan of attack that necessarily strategized against those problems.
Yep.
This goes back to, I bring up 3rd and 16, and I bring up this play a lot. I'm not suggesting that the Ravens just convert that 3rd and 16, which is tough to do. Yeah. That this game would have been all that different. But I'll use it as an example. You know that they're playing without 3 cornerbacks.
Like that, a quarterback should be drooling. Like I would imagine,
and yet you're running a give-up play on 3rd down. And I get it; it's really hard to convert 3rd and 16. I'm not saying this is just a gimme play that if they have just drawn something up, they would have converted it.
Yeah.
But the decision is really weird to me when you know they don't have their cornerbacks. We've got Lamar Jackson. Maybe we could set a different tone for this football game if we convert a 3rd and 16 on our first drive, move the ball down the field after we got a defensive stop, score first, make them play from behind, knowing we also get the ball to start the second half.
Yeah, you keep them on the field, a series longer. It's all there's a chain reaction that happens if they get that.
I'm not sure what the line is between the culpability of the players and the culpability of the coaches. I'm not certain where that exact line is. But to both of your points, I'm not saying there is none for the coaches. Absolutely, the coaching staff has to look themselves in the mirror and think about what went wrong, their strategy, their decision-making. And yes, it doesn't seem like they did the things that... Absolutely, the fact they've lost 17 straight games where they've been trailing at the half, no doubt.
I didn't know that was a stat.
That's a damning number. It's a damning number, even if every game is different, even if every circumstance is different. That's still a damning number to look at. That there are 17 consecutive games in which you've been trailing at the half.
Could be a guy hits a 15-yard field goal, with a second left. All right, we'll go in.
Something like that, right? But it's damning. There's no doubt. John from Little Rock, so much for crowning the division to the Ravens. Massive issues on defense that aren't changing overnight. It's amazing how getting beat like we did today makes it seem so dim going forward. I mean, that's the nature of the sport, right? Like, you only get 16 of these games, so every game is going to end up leaving you with an immediate feeling. Like, whereas 3 weeks ago, the immediate feeling was, oh my God, the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl.
People were looking up hotel suites.
Correct.
And all that.
This week, it's more of a, oh God, that's the nature of football.
Yeah, it's such high. You have such high highs and such low lows.
It's probably not quite as bad as we feel like it is at the moment. But what we all have to come to grips with is there's really a defensive problem. Can it be solved? Perhaps. Can it be solved with the personnel they have, with the personnel they're getting back? Unfortunately, we know the nature of the sport is there's going to be more injuries at some point. That's the way that it works. We will see. But does that mean the season's going to be doomed by it? Not necessarily. Again, they might just become the team that has to score more points than their opponent because their defense isn't what it used to be, or they need to ask for something else. One of the things that we talked about a year ago, the last couple of years when they had these statistically really good defenses, was were they getting the takeaways? Like, statistically, their defenses were good. Were they getting the turnovers, the big plays that they needed, considering how much they invested on that side of the ball? Well, it might be that statistically this isn't going to be a great defense, but can it become a defense that maybe just makes some big plays? That even if they give up a lot of yards and can they be a team that makes big plays?
It seems like the Patriots are always like that. The Patriots are always that, like, bend, don't break. They'll let you they'll give up 500 yards, but they'll give up 13 points.
Right.
And the Patriots, it seems like they do that every single year. Not this year, they're playing very well this year, but that's something that they do.
Kent wants to know if Eunice can talk Ed Reed out of retirement. I don't think, and I don't want to speak for Eunice. I'll let him handle that. I don't think that's going to be the case. Speaking of Eunice, he does say, going for 2, even though they got it, gave the sense of desperation to me, which I think changed the confidence vibe of the game. Meaning, even though they got it, it made everyone feel like the team had to pull out all the tricks just to try to win, and the wheels fell off after that. It's a really funny thing to me, right? Where I don't know if the analytic concept has spread to the players yet. Like, it was funny watching a lot of players react to it on Twitter. Like, Justin Forsett was like, don't care that they got it. I hate that decision. I think somebody else that I saw, and I was like, this is a weird bit, man, where like, I would think that players would love the aggressiveness. I would think, and the players that I talked to this week, all as a man. Now, I talked to offensive players, but Justin Forsett's an offensive player. All were all about the idea of being aggressive.
It's more points. It's it's more chance for yards and stuff like that.
Keep us on the field. Believe that we can do. Yes, that's who we want to be. So, if the argument that Glenn's making is maybe on the other side of the ball, they don't feel that way.
Defense is going, they got to score more because they don't think we can stop them.
Is that the feel that comes across? We certainly bring up the fact that they went for it after they gave up that touchdown. They then went for it on 4th down. It was kind of clear they thought it was 4-down territory because remember it was like 3rd and 6 and they ran the ball.
And you said something like, "Why are they doing that?" And then you're like, "Oh, it's 4-down territory."
They decided everything was 4 downs. That was absolutely a statement because there were still about 8 minutes left. That was absolutely a statement of we don't believe we can get 2 more stops at this point.
It had the feel of like the college games where it's like it's
we know we have to go do it because the other side of the ball it's not coming from that side of the ball.
They can't stop it. Yeah.
And GY, if your point is that you think that feel spreads the defense when you see things like that, maybe. I mean, I would still say, hey, go make the play. But like,
I can definitely buy into that thought, though.
I still think that again, specifically given the analytics combined with the fact that they had just marched down the field at will on that drive, I was good with that particular decision even before they got it. Even before they got it, I said, okay. You put together a completely functional, do whatever you want type of drive. There is the advantage that if you get it, potentially you could try to win the game in regulation. I'm all right with this decision, with the math equaling a feel for football at that point. Paul, are the only receivers we have that seem to be able to get... Hang on a second. Are the only receivers we have that seem to be able to get open with any regularity at the moment Andrews and Brown? Or does any of it have to do with Lamar maybe not looking for the other guys? It seems to be a problem one way or the other. You would never guess Hayden Hurst was a first-round pick just last year, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, that part is true. He did throw a touchdown to Miles Boykin today. There was another big pass to Miles Boykin, and Willie Snead had a big conversion as well. But, yeah, for the most part, those guys are not terribly involved in the passing game. And right now the running back's not really involved in the passing game either. That does need to continue. I don't think that was the story today, but I think for the first 4 games of the season, we all know they need to try to get more players involved on offense. I think we would all kind of agree with that.
And it does. I mean, like you were saying, it seems like every pass is either going to Andrews or Brown. Like you said, Boykin was sprinkled in. I think on the ride here, I heard he had 2 catches, I think, coming in. I think he had 2 catches today. So it's, I mean, they got to get more people involved in the offense. Like you said, the Ravens' offense used to be, I mean, Ray Rice used to catch how many passes a year? And it's, I know he's a special player. But it's like you got to get the running backs have to be involved. You'd think with all the guys they have that they could get them involved in the passing game.
I'm not saying they have thrown the ball to running backs this year. I think that Justice Hill is the one that you're looking at and saying that he might be the type of player. Although
screen guy or something like that.
Justice Hill also might be in the doghouse a little bit because he dropped another kickoff today. We saw that role got taken away from him afterwards. That was his second. That was his second drop kickoff of the season. Now that shouldn't impact whether or not you're going to him. But if you've got questions about his hands, that's
a good barometer, kind of.
That's what it is. All right, we could continue doing this, and we will tomorrow morning. I'll continue doing it from 10 to noon on Glenn Clark Radio, but we will try to wind down for this edition of the Project Game Day post-game show. Ravens move on. They face the Steelers. It'll be interesting to see. Tomorrow night you'll get a chance to watch the Steelers. It'll be interesting to see how their offense evolves in Week 2 with Mason Rudolph. The big storyline in Week 1 was that they weren't throwing the ball downfield. Everything was underneath. They threw the ball beyond the line of scrimmage twice the entire game, which is staggering.
Yeah, that's not great.
I don't think they will do that again, but it'll be interesting to see if it opens up a little bit more, if we see they brought in Nick Van Ette, obviously the tight end from Seattle. It'll be interesting to see how that offense evolves tomorrow night to get a better feel for what it is the Ravens are up against next week. We don't feel as though it's a terribly daunting task right now to try to beat the Steelers, but we'll see how we feel about it after we get a chance to look at them tomorrow night in Week 2 of Mason Rudolph under center. So that's what's coming up as Project Game Day. We'll be back next week after another 1 o'clock game. Eric, I want to give you a chance to really quickly plug something that you've been doing because it's really awesome and something that we care about a lot. And I know you're still is your Venmo still open right now?
Venmo is still open. Like Glenn said, yesterday we had a fundraiser, Orioles season-ending watch party and fundraiser for Mo Gaba at Jimmy's Seafood yesterday. Again, it just started
Mo is Baltimore sports fans.
Literally Baltimore. And I did an interview with Stan on the way here, and he asked me, can you remember someone in this town like bringing together not just the Orioles or the Ravens, both teams, the community? And I said in Baltimore, no. I said nationally, it reminds me of the Tyler Trent story with Purdue.
Yep.
Just where it seems like, and Stan had a good point, it seems like the teams are almost trying to one-up each other on the Ravens in a good way, saying, well, we're going to let Mo call it the draft pick.
And the neat part about it is he's just such a good kid that this is all real. Like, this is all just
nothing is forced from any aspect. Right. None of the teams, again, they're doing this because of who he is, and he genuinely loves the teams, the sports, the players. I mean, like, he's better friends with Trey Mancini than probably some guys on the team.
No doubt.
And again, with the Ravens, I feel like he's at the Ravens facility more than some of the players are. He's there every time, and like Glenn said, so we got together for the game yesterday, raised money for Mo. All of it is going to Mo and his mother. Jimmy's is doubling whatever we've brought in. I think I told Glenn my Venmo is open. It's at my name, Eric, ERIC -Arditti, ARDITTI. We were at over $2,100 before I checked. I haven't checked in the last few minutes. Probably $600 or $700 in cash, and then we're getting donations still. So we plan to drop that off to him and his family, sometime this week. And if anyone wants to donate, I'm not saying no. Anything that comes in, we'll 100% make it to Mo and his mother. So we're trying to put a smile on little Mo's face because, kids dealt with more in 14 years than anyone should ever have to think about dealing with. So.
It's not just unfathomable what he's had to deal with. It's unfathomable how unbelievably positive and what a light he's been for an entire community as he's dealt with it.
There were so many people I talked to yesterday that said, "Oh, I listened to him on the radio for years and had no idea, that he's gone through any of this stuff." And again, it's like. That just seems like the kind of person he is, where he literally wants to call into the radio station just to talk sports. He's not looking for a sob story. He's not looking for pat on the back. He's like, hey, I want to know what if the Orioles are going to win tonight.
And the sheer joy that he has hanging out with the mascot.
Oh my gosh.
Hanging out with it's just incredible.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the pictures yesterday on the Orioles Twitter of him and Buck and Manny and Britton coming over from the Yankees dugout this year. So we're just trying to put a smile on him and his mother's face, and trying to help them out in a hard time.
Your Venmo again is
at Eric Arditti. It's at ERIC-ARDITTI.
Awesome. Shoot a couple bucks over Eric's way and support Mo. It's very, very meaningful what it is that's going on, and we're rooting for Mo. Continue to root for Mo and his family in their fight, and that's an awesome thing that you're doing. So I love that. And again, it's at Editti, EDITTI 22
on Twitter.
On Twitter is how people follow him, and of course BarstoolSports.com. And you'll be back in here. You're gonna do a couple more games with me as the season goes along.
I also totally forgot I have to eat. Do I have to eat the licorice? Should I lose this baseball bet?
Oh,
Kyle told me yesterday. Kyle dropped that bomb on me yesterday.
It's between you and I. We will get the finality. We'll have to figure out a day. We'll have to figure out a day for you to come in.
I thought it was going to be today. Kyle dropped that on me yesterday, saying, "Hey, we got the black licorice, for you."
Oh man! All right, we will take a look. We will take a look and see where we're at. Thanks for coming in and doing this with us. I will be back with Project Game Day next week again. It is once again. Look, it's Ravens Steelers we're talking about, right? Like this is.
It's definitely a different flavor. It's a different flavor than a couple years ago, but it's still Ravens Steelers.
Ken Zales will be back in studio for Project Game Day next week, and looking forward to that. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, 10 to noon, for Glenn Clark Radio and at Glenn Clark Radio on Twitter. Thanks to Eric. Thanks to all of our great sponsors who make Project Game Day happen: Wise Markets, Glory Days Grill, Costa Inn, Glen Burnie Transmissions, and the U.S. Army. We'll see you next week. This has been Project Game Day.